Hello and welcome to Curious Conversations. We are your hosts, Carly and Mandy, and today we are talking about a kind of old but high profile case. And this was one that kind of just captured the nation's attention. And I think because of the heaviness of the subject, and two, just so many really strong opinions out there. We're talking about Gypsy Rose Blanchard.
Yeah, and we've talked about this personally, so much so that I really thought we already did this.
I know. I was surprised we didn't. I think we mentioned it several episodes ago
Mhm.
as maybe a curious dish.
Yeah,
Um, and then we never revisited, but she's still coming out in the news and on TikTok with new things.
I know she's not going away, so it's not one of those things where, hey, you remember that year, da 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 da. It's like an
Yes.
active, it's still going on.
Ongoing, ongoing. Hmm. Okay, so we have so much. We aren't just presenting her story. We have some different takes on some things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna just kind of lay it out there. Before we do that, we do want to share with you this week's curious dish. So this is the part of our show where we dish about the most curious thing that we have seen or read this week. Mandy, what you got?
So I thought this was kind of fun. Um, and relates to us. A friend of mine who watches, listens to our podcast. He contacted me and said, "Oh my gosh, have you seen Based on a True Story?" And I had not heard of that. And I'm always surprised when there's something out there that seems like something I would watch, and I've not heard of it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Did you know this? Based on a True Story. It's a series.
No, and actually, when you were telling me a little about it through a text message, and you
Yep.
said it's based on a true story, and I was like, "Great, what's the name of it?" And you're like, "Based on a
It's
true story."
based on a true story. I know. Yeah, that's funny, but well, that is obviously confusing. But it is called Based on a True Story, and it's fun. So this is a fictitious story about a couple who are looking to, make some money and sort of spice up their boring life. And so who they suspect to be a serial killer in their community, they decide to kind of hold them hostage to create a podcast where they have the actual thing. So they're trying to compete with these true crime podcasts. And that's not too big of a spoiler. It tells that right up front. So I just, I thought that was fun. And I'm about 4 or 5 episodes in. And it's humorous. It's funny. It's a lot, even though it's not lots subject matter. It's the way they do it is fun.
So what I'm hearing is if we really want to stand out as a podcast,
Yes.
we need to kidnap a serial killer.
Yes,
Got
I thought that would be your takeaway. Yeah.
it. Yes, that was my takeaway. That's what we
Yeah,
need.
that's gonna take a plan and that sort of thing. So I don't have all that ironed out yet. Let's see how they screw up on the show. Okay, let's see
Okay,
what they do wrong.
that sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so mine is, we're looking into a lot of social media stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, who can get away with not? And I like to show some good, some positive. So I wanted to talk today about the most hated TikToker in America.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've ever crossed her channel. Her name is Caitlin Campbell.
Mhm.
And I've watched her older stuff where she was oh so hated. Um, she owns a little coffee shop. It's a travel one. It's in a, movable, kind of like a food truck, but it's a
Yeah.
coffee shop. Looks fantastic. She has a very upbeat, happy personality. I don't know how anyone could dislike her, but
Hmm.
the comments were just the meanest, most hateful I've ever read. I don't understand that at all. Um, I don't know how I got started, whatever. And then I think it became like a running joke of, hey, how can we hate on Caitlin today? Um, she actually, somebody, several people that are more influential on TikTok and liked, picked up on this and thought that was just ridiculous. And so I have to throw some sunshine towards, it's called Podcasts God. God has two D's. He actually had Caitlin on his show and just said, "Hey, what people hate you, you know?" And she's like, "I don't know." They had a great talk about it, and now she's like slugged TikToker out there.
Oh my
Crazy.
gosh. No, I don't know who that is. And I've never understood all that kind of thing where people are just vicious. I don't have that kind of thick skin. So, might not bounce back in the same way. Kudos to her for that.
Mhm.
One time I got slammed and, dug through the trenches for something that I didn't really ever understand. And I kind of get that's just somebody pushing buttons, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
it's just shocking to me. I don't understand where that's
Yeah.
coming from.
I don't either. I think it is curious how mindless we can be,
Yep.
and just blind to following what everybody else says. We hate Caitlin today. All right, we hate Caitlin. Let's make some mean comments because we're keyboard warriors. And
Yep.
then the next day, oh, we don't hate her anymore. Oh, I love her. That just drives me crazy. But
Yeah.
but kudos to these people who decided to use their influence for good. I see that a lot, and it's very encouraging.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. And although we may not always talk super highly of anybody we talk about on here, sometimes we don't agree with people, we have opinions. Like I don't understand the slamming and I don't understand the personal hate for somebody you don't know. I just don't get all that. I hope to never become that kind of person. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, today we are talking about Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Um, I know we are behind the eight ball on this. I know, but we have some thoughts we want to share, and we just can't move on without doing it. If you don't know who Gypsy Rose is, you must not have the internet. Um, it's easy to find her. You just start typing Gypsy, and your computer's like, I know what you want.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So this is a girl who, from a very young age, um, had a lot of health issues, allegedly. We'll talk about that. She actually was in a wheelchair. She was on a feeding tube. Um, Slept with a CPAP. She had several procedures done on her eyes. Her salivary glands were removed. Between that and the litany of medication that she was on, her teeth all went bad. Had to have them all removed. Um, Her mother claimed, some different things. She had cancer at some point. Her mom shaved her head, so she had no hair. And this girl lived like this until she was in her 20s, with her mother by her side, caring for her. They had a lot of help from the community. They lived in a Habitat for Humanity home. They were given trips to Disney and things like that, and then flown to their medical appointments. Just a lot of support from the community, and not just the immediate community. She had a lot of national attention because
Mhm.
of it. It was all fake. None of it was real.
Yeah, isn't that so shocking? Even when I hear it again, I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah, this was when this came out. I mean, this was a big shocker.
Yeah, I just kept thinking, this is not real. This is not real. Someone made this up. They made up the story.
Yeah.
Um, this can't be true, but it was absolutely true. It didn't end there. It did not end well for the mom. Gypsy met a boy, and the boy was easily convinced and ended up killing mom. Just took her out. And
Yep.
Gypsy Rose, who was hiding in the bathroom in her wheelchair at the time, walked out, leaving her wheelchair behind, and she's never been in one since. And, mom's gone. So,
Yeah, that's like okay, so that hits all the marks of what people like in storytelling for
mm,
series, true crime, all the things because it's got that shocker of an ending. And we're talking about somebody's true life, so I don't mean to I don't want to glorify, I don't want to build this up in any way that's like it's fiction, but think about that like as a story. I mean, you get the shocker of all that, and then like what we said, she's still going on. She's still doing things. This did not take her down completely. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about where she is now. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this, even though this might be an older story. She's still out there and doing her thing. And we want to touch on all that. But
Yeah.
this story was crazy. I want the mom's backstory. Like I want a story on just the mom.
Yeah, I would like to know more about the mom, her upbringing, her parents. What was her childhood like a little bit? But also, I think she was a little bit of a partier in her younger years. A good-looking lady, right?
Mhm.
So, what was that all about? I would like
Right.
to know more.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, you and I watch different things where this is concerned. I know there was like 6 series or documentaries. There's 6 tellings of this. So go out there and watch all of it, watch some of it. It's all sort of on the same page, just some different aspects added. Um, well, tell us about what you watched first, and then I'll share my take.
Yeah. Well, I've only watched one. I do know
Mhm.
she has a reality TV show right now that I've not really watched a whole lot of. I've seen little clips, here and there that kind of portray, life after prison and what's in store for her now and her relationships. Um, but the I actually watched the documentary and it's called Mommy, Dead and Dearest. Um, do you have down here? It's Aaron Lee Carr was the director.
I think so.
I don't want to say that wrong, but that might be wrong. It was very well written. I felt it was really good. It was a just a true portrayal. They showed a lot of photos, some flashback videos as they told the story. I felt it unraveled really well. Did you watch that one?
I did watch that one.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I actually watched that one after I watched the one with the actors though. The
Oh,
act. So I was like, oh, I want to know more, and how I wanted to see how the actors did. When you see somebody do a really good job acting, you think it is, then you want to see the real people and make that comparison. Um,
yes.
all this was very interesting. And I also, it was, I don't want to say fun, but it was neat to see. It's not, none of this is fun, guys. It was neat to see how Gypsy talked and how she was like nowadays, like how is
Mhm.
she in just normal setting? Um, because you want to see, is this the crazy there? Is you know what I mean? Do you do that? Like, can I pick up on
So,
that thing?
yes. And even though I've not seen a whole lot, I have seen the home videos where Gypsy is her voice is squeaky, like a very childlike, very mouse-like. Um, she has a deep Southern drawl to her voice
Mhm.
in her videos as a child that she doesn't have as much now. It's like overnight, uh, as soon as she stood up out of a wheelchair, she just dropped all of that. I thought that was odd,
It's weird.
peculiar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you can hear that in her voice, the ability to do it, but it's almost like if you're acting out a character. And so if you have a deeper voice or a higher voice, you can see that you do that. But um, playing that part that she was playing, how much of that was her getting into the part or her being directed for the part? It's a lot of blurred lines.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so tell me, I do have a question. With you watching the act, do you feel the actors on the show portrayed the true characters well?
Yeah, so Joey King is playing her, and it was surprising. And especially if you've seen Joey in something else since then. So I, I would suggest you watch that and tell me what you think, and then watch her in something else. It's
Mm.
interesting to think she really did play this part so well. Patricia Arquette is playing Dee Dee, her mom, and she's amazing. She loses all Patricia Arquette for the most part, and just really nails this part. And that's an older movie now, but I think almost before this got so well known, But both of them did great. The guy playing her boyfriend did great. I can't think of his name right now, but I thought surely to goodness this is all he can play because he's doing it that well. But I have seen him in something sort of an elite position and character since then, and I was like, oh my gosh, I only recognized him because of the eyes. And so it is acting. I'm still like
Okay.
that kid in me. I'm like, oh, that must be how he is.
I know.
Yeah, but
Yes.
it was amazing. I thought it was really, I thought it was done really well, and I felt like I was getting all the things, pretty much like watching a documentary because they did cover a lot. There's a little pizzazz, but this story doesn't need much pizzazz added. It hits all the things.
Yeah. I mean, shockingly so. There's
Yep.
a whole lot to it. And there's a lot of mixed thoughts, a lot of
Yep.
mixed opinions. Um, kind of want to get into that. Let me just ask you. What are
Oh
you
no.
feeling?
Oh no. Um,
Jump right into that. Just a base overview. What are your takeaways from that?
okay, when I first heard about it and watched both of these things, I thought, well, bless her heart, what a mess to grow up this way. And what would that do to you? Because it is hard to watch, it's hard to listen to
Mm,
the story and to think of how corrupt the mother's love was. And maybe the mom couldn't even help herself. That's a whole other thing. So I did
mm,
feel sorry for her. By the end of the story, when you find out what happened, especially if you didn't know ahead of time, that was that kind of turned it for me. I still was like, okay, um, I get that that messed you up, and so maybe in your mind you thought this is all I can do to get out of the situation, sort of a I don't know, like a black and white thought process. I've got to get out completely. I can't deal with her in my life at all. But this was really messed up. And we can talk a little bit about the details of why this is really messed up. But seeing her afterwards, and I thought I had a lot of mixed feelings, and some of them were kind of nasty. And then I
mm.
was kind of combating my own thoughts because I was like, "Don't be judgmental. You're not there." But it's a little off putting, and I know if you look online, I'm not the only one who feels this way.
Yeah, I was actually shocked at the number of people who were quick to stand up for Dee Dee Blanchard
Mhm.
against Gypsy Rose.
Yeah,
A lot of
yeah,
people. Yeah, it was I really thought, well, there's going to be a lot of people who think just murder in general is wrong. But I was surprised at how many people are just kind of angry with her and just think that she didn't serve enough time. So I will say Gypsy did not physically kill her mother. She had that done by her boyfriend at the time. But she did the planning. There was definitely coercion behind the scenes happening. She was in the home the night of, didn't put a stop to it, those types of things. And I think that's where people are so bothered is she knew that's what was going to take place and she just hid and let it happen. There's a lot of anger about
yeah.
that.
And I'm no expert. And again, like we always say on here, we're giving our opinions for what they are, our personal take on things as we see those things and hear those things. For me, it was very disturbing to think about the callousness in the end. The excuse me, the it seemed senseless in the end, even though you knew all the reasoning. The crime seemed very uh vicious, and the things surrounding that seemed like someone who didn't really care, although you'd heard all this about how much she did care.
Yeah,
That was
I'm going
hard.
to yeah, absolutely. But I'm gonna flip the table a little bit. I
Okay.
don't know, have you seen the crime scene photos? I'm sure you have not.
You know I have not.
I know you don't like those.
Yeah, you can
Have
just
them.
tell me.
They're bad. They're
I
bad.
bet.
Enough so that I mean, you can't find them on the internet unless you know someone who's got them. I got them from someone's personal Google Drive. I was like, yeah, share
Oh,
those. That's good. Um, It's bad. It's really bad, and, enough that we absolutely couldn't show it. Mom, there's some nudity in them, it was really bad. I don't know, this kid had some rage or something going on,
Yeah,
for
do you
sure.
think, because sometimes I think Gypsy was brilliant. Sometimes I think that she was sort of backwards in her thinking, for lack of a better word, sort of innocent and childlike. And this is the back and forth you saw online from the beginning.
Mhm.
And then I think no, she's brilliant. She knew exactly who to get to fall into to place with this, and it appeared, like I said, no, I haven't seen that. I don't have the access that you have. But I do know that it was vicious, and it would have made more sense to me almost if that were her that did that than him. Why was he so vicious about that?
Yeah, I think that he was an angry teenager, and I don't know that he was a teenager. I think he was 19, but I'm not sure. He was angry. There's definitely a little bit, gosh, I don't really wanna speak ill of him necessarily, um, but maybe he wasn't, like, the smartest guy in
Yes.
class,
Mm-hmm.
easily influenced,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, to do
Sure.
things that are just horrendous and horrific, and I was shocked. I think, he probably could have done much, much less and taken care of the same job. So there was just an anger there, and I think a lot of that came from Gypsy. I don't think that Gypsy sought this guy out thinking, "I can talk him into anything." I think they
Right.
genuinely maybe just wanted to have a normal relationship. I do know mom found out, put her on a very harsh lockdown, destroyed her computer, and from there, it's like I'm being told no, well, I'm gonna do it. They have that teenage, rebellious teenage spirit. Neither of them were teenagers, but that rebellious teenage spirit of no, you can't tell me what I can and cannot do. And that would think was probably the first time Gypsy had ever really rebelled. And in that rebellion, maybe she just thought, okay, I'm gonna spill all of it. I'm gonna tell, a person everything I've been through, and it is a lot. It's enough to make you angry as a mom, if my child was in that situation, I don't wanna kill somebody. And she did reach out and look for some protection from the outside world. I think even law enforcement, and she didn't get it. Um, they couldn't prove anything as wrong, so
Right.
she was
Well,
angry, and I think he felt the need to protect her, and just being a teenager and a teenage brain, he doesn't know how to do that appropriately. So he went about it very inappropriately.
yeah, when you talk about him receiving that information, you kind of have to be careful who you tell things to, because you're going to get the person who's like listening and they're that ear for you. And I'm talking like in the most what you think of as normal range. But then
Yes.
you've probably got some friend who's like, well, I'm going to call them out on this. And so if you take that and just amp that up, um, the way this guy took this was well, we all know how it ended, but how much she knew ahead of time and how much she was manipulating to be like, I know he's going to take this and run with it. And then I don't know what kind of mind games she might have been playing with herself.
Mhm.
That's what
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right is, it's something that everything got out of control very quickly.
Mhm.
Um, but I want to point out some things
Okay.
that I feel. These are my unpopular opinions of the day.
All right. I like
Um,
those.
let's talk about self-defense rights.
Okay.
It is my strong belief that if someone were to try to break into uh, the home
Hmm.
of Dee Dee Blanchard and Gypsy Rose, if someone broke in and tried to take Gypsy's life, uh, Dee Dee would have had every right to kill that person. It's stand your ground. You absolutely have the right to defend yourself when someone comes into your home. Um, Her mother's antics, I do believe, would have killed her eventually. We're
Hmm.
not talking just convincing a child that they have, reoccurring headaches. We're talking about a lady who's twisted enough to talk doctors into performing medical procedures on a child and the plethora of medications that she was given. I have a picture of the cabinet that all of her meds are in. It was so much, and she's mixing up little concoctions every day. Your body can only do that for so long before it's going to start to break down. So let's talk about that. Was there any self-defense in that?
Yeah, well, and I'm all for self-defense, and probably anything that you say is not going to be too out there for me. I'm probably going to agree with you to a pretty big degree, but um yeah, I'm thinking, gosh, I have a lot of thoughts on that. And then when you bring up the medicine too, and I'm just sort of, that's building up in me to think maybe Gypsy felt like she had to self defend, and it was sort of like a disconnect there. Do you think that too?
Yeah, there were absolutely better ways to do it, and being on the other side of it and saying, "Gosh, you're an adult now. You have every right to walk out of that home. You don't have to stay there. Just walk out." You
That was
know?
the, yeah, that's what killed me, is it's like, well, you could have just left.
Mhm.
But do you think that she thought she couldn't?
But she tried. Yeah, she
Yeah,
left
well,
at one point.
yeah, that's
Her
true.
mom went and got her.
That's
I mean,
right.
she
Yeah.
had pretty much deemed her mentally unstable. So anybody Gypsy did reach out to, it was, well, she's got a lot. She
Yeah.
doesn't know what she's saying. Um, the level of manipulation on her part as a mother, I can absolutely see where Gypsy didn't have the the knowledge of, or just the clear thinking of, "Hey, I can get out of this situation." She had no idea. She was on such a young level. It was like a little child, a small child that thinks there's no other way out.
Yeah, does it make you think of, what was it, Don't Pick Up the Phone?
Oh,
That we talked
yes.
about before. It's like, but I couldn't leave the office. Well, of course, that person didn't have clothes and they were, being abused. But it's a, you technically could, you technically
Right.
could, but your mindset is you can't.
Mhm.
And I think we need to do something on, we need to do a future episode on brainwashing too, because that, I've heard a lot of different stories about that, and people thinking that they don't have a voice. They don't, they're immobile.
Yes. We absolutely should.
Yeah,
Yes.
we need to do that.
And I think there is a level of brainwashing in this, but even just, have you ever been driving and you make a wrong turn and so you feel a little lost and then all sense of direction is out the window? You're just, I'll run in circles in a panic because now what
Mhm.
am I going to do? We
Yeah.
get ourselves in such a funk. Um, I just think there was so much mental fog there. Think of all the medication she was on. It completely had changed her personality. Um, so I don't know that she could even think straight to know, walk out of the house and walk to the police station. I
Mhm.
don't, no idea.
Yeah, it's almost like a two-person cult, right?
Yeah, yes.
You've been trapped by this, and you've been told you can't do these things, and you've been given things to kind of dumb you down. And um gosh, there's so many points here. And we talked about the senselessness of it, even though there was reasoning, that it was just so violent and so cruel. And is that what she wanted, or did she just want her gone? Did she Could she not do it herself, so she had somebody to go about it in such a way that that's what she would have done? Like, inside of herself, did she feel like kicking and screaming and just, like a wild animal? Or did she think, no, I just wanted her gone? If somebody could have just put her on an island, it would have been okay.
Mhm. Well, she wrote a letter to her mother while she was in prison. It is very long. I almost printed it to read, but it's very long. And she articulates really well. She is educated. She is a smart one. But she talks in that letter about the childhood that she thought she should have. There's not a whole lot of, her mom's dead. She's writing a letter to her dead mother, and she acknowledges that. It's not a crazy thing. She says, "But I just need to tell you what I should have just told you, basically. These are the things I needed to say to you." And she talks about how she took her childhood away from her, and had she not done something, she
Mhm.
would still be, sitting in that same position. But all of the surgery she went through, her body is scarred from surgeries. Um, gosh, and all not medically necessary. And that's a whole other, I don't want to go into that. I read a meme the other day that said, a patient cured as a customer lost. Um, Talking about the medical field, and I know there are great doctors out and nurses out there, and there are great programs and things that we need, so I don't wanna, downplay any of that, but there were some doctors involved that what in the heck were they thinking, were they
Yeah.
so was Dee Dee that good of a manipulator?
I think she was pretty good. I
Yeah,
think she was pretty good. I think it also had to do with the time period. We talk a lot about things in if they were happening right now, how it would look different. Even from just a couple of years ago, it would look different. There's a lot more red tape, I would say.
mhm.
But still, there's those situations that fall through the cracks. And um, I don't know. Sometimes I think people will do something that maybe they regret, but they did it in the moment because they were just tired of hearing from the person. Like, doctors are just people too. They could make mistakes and
Mhm.
think, well, I didn't really see the harm and it kind of looked like this. And maybe I didn't read all of the file, but I thought because it was coming down from Dr. So and so that it was legit. All these things just sort of taken for granted, maybe.
And I think that's probably part of it. She had gone to so many doctors. There were so many that were involved and all had, their notes. And I think it kind of all just got put together, so that if a doctor picks up her file, she has seen 20 doctors and they've all said, similar things. So you just kind of take for granted other people's research, and it's like, oh, okay, well, she's got these things. We know that they've been set by somebody.
Yeah.
So okay, this is what she has. How do we treat her?
So, excuse me. I have a thought, but let me ask you first because we're sort of dancing around this. So we're talking about Munchausen by proxy, which is in the short version. You are, making it's usually like a parent, like a mother, a
Mhm.
caregiver position, and they're doing things to make their child or whoever look like they're sick. And then they're kind of the hero because they're taking care of that. It's almost like they're setting up conflict to come in and rescue.
Mm.
um, were you familiar with that before all of this?
I was familiar with the term. um, and I've seen what I think would be Munchausen's by proxy in other people's lives and thought something's off right there.
Mhm.
There's what's going on with that. Um, but not intimately familiar. No. You?
Okay. Well, so it'll be a big spoiler if I say this about a couple of movies that people may already know. One's a book, but personally, I haven't known anybody who was dealing that. You see like those touches and you think, why is the parent acting this way towards them? It's almost like setting them up for failure or maybe making them feel sicker than they are. And then without it being to the extreme, you don't know if that's just like a nervous person, a paranoid person, like, oh
Right.
gosh, um, the closest I would know, which is not, I wouldn't say Munchausen by proxy, but one of my grandmothers, her mother had a nervous disorder back in the day. That's all they would have said that was
Mm.
from trauma. And so she sort of spread that out to her kids. And so, like, my grandmother would have to live very fearful, a very strict life according to all the fears of my great grandmother because she
Mm.
was dealing with stuff and she put it on her, which made her think, oh, yeah, you can't go outside. You can't do this. You can't do that. When you're kind of putting your fears onto a child and making that seem like it's real. to
Hmm.
them, but maybe it's not intentional, it's from experience. That's probably the closest like personal story I know of. But we're talking about somebody, putting medicine surgeries. um you hear about things like with injections and all kinds of things to make someone think they have something or they're ill, and they're not. That's It's terrifying.
Yeah, I think there are different levels to that. There are the experiences of your own childhood where you start to fear things, and it might be completely unwarranted or unnecessary in someone else's mind, but in yours, it is a big deal. You have certain things that, and we do scare our children by saying, "Hey, these things are bad," and they just take that as, "All right, it's gold. Mom said it." I think that's one thing when it just is the person's a little more innocent in it, and they're doing it because of an actual irrational, but an actual fear. And then you've got people who are on the other side that, they're poisoning their children because, I don't want these anymore. There's that side of it. And then you've got right in the middle that Munchausen. And it's very difficult because you almost want to feel sorry for the person. That they're not doing it because they hate the human in their life. They're doing it because they have a massive need to feel needed. And there
Yeah.
are, some other things that play into that. But you almost feel sorry for them.
Did you ever read the book Sharp Objects or watch the movie?
No, but I will now.
Yeah, you need to. You better.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
it touches on that in the storyline. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, that's really good, very intense story about a lot of different things. But this idea is scary to me because you think of a parent as loving
Mm,
and nurturing, and certainly there's those people who are not like that. But when it's to this degree, it's almost like the wolf in sheep's clothing, and it's like your own person is trying to get to you. The closest person to you is making your life miserable, sick, impairing you in all these ways. And what I was going to touch on before was so you've got Gypsy growing up and being made to believe she's a certain way, and she's playing this part, and she's kind of become that part. But she's also, just like any of us do, she's watching her parent, she's
mhm,
learning their traits. And so, almost in a parallel, she's becoming this woman while she's the kid who does these
mhm.
other things. And I think that's the two sides of her. So, when you say that she's smart, she's capable, it's like, how? How is she that? Because she was growing almost like two. It's surprising she didn't have like, personality disorder, multiple personality disorder, because, and maybe she does in a way, because she was
Right.
playing a part. And then there's the person she was meant to be or was going to be naturally.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Another thought that I thought of, there was a lack of involvement on her part in the actual death,
Mhm.
physical act of killing
Right.
her mother. Um, Gypsy's out. Gypsy did go to prison. I think 8 years was her sentence. Um, the boyfriend did not fare well. He is in prison for life. Uh, I watched an interview with him. He says he just still loves Gypsy. Um, has a huge spot in his heart for her. And I thought, well, that's different. I would think he would be angry. You had me do this, and now you're off living your life, and everything's great. You've moved on, and I'm stuck in prison for the rest of my life. Now he did become a Christian in prison, so he has his God, and that's his hope. And he refuses to speak negatively about anyone. I think because of that finding God and changing how he lives his life and the standards that he has. Um, it is easier to see him as a protector of Gypsy than a brutal, brutal murderer if you watch his current interviews. Now, watching him while he was sitting and, being interrogated,
Mm-hmm.
he looks a little crazy.
It's a little crazy.
Just a little crazy.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if he saw someone trying to murder another person on the street, would he have the right to defend that, innocent person? Yes, legally he would. But because it was a mother and it was in a home and maybe how angry he was or the actual acts that were performed, now he's the bad guy. And I just wonder if maybe we take like their homely appearance, that heavy Southern accent, the home was very cluttered. If you've seen the photos of the home, not gross, excuse me, not gross cluttered, but just cluttered with stuff. Um, we automatically want to take that and fit it into like turn it into a story, maybe like the troubled youth of America
Mhm.
kind of narrative is what we want it to fit. If it would have been a tidier home, more well-spoken children, and they were fighting off a monster, we'd lift them up as heroes. Um, so it's very difficult because you can see Dee Dee as an absolute monster, but you can also see her as someone who just wanted to pull her kid as close to her as she could and hold on forever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have some thoughts that may be unpopular opinions. I mean, what's popular and what's not kind of goes with the wind these days. And so,
Yeah.
but I do feel like for me, I just thought it was weird. I'd made this comment to you before, just brief, not getting into a thing, but you take somebody like Charles Manson, who's thought of as like master manipulator, um, you know, everybody hates him. That's somebody who's thought of as like the monster, right? And this was somebody who was a manipulator, and this was somebody who got somebody else to do a vicious crime. She's out in 8 years. She's moving on with her life. She's doing all these cutesy things, and I'm all for redemption. Don't get me wrong, and I think there's redemption for everybody in any
Sure.
circumstance. I do, but it's just funny how people see one thing one way because it's what palatable. I don't know. And then they see something else completely different because I always thought that was a very Charles Manson's a very interesting case to me, a whole other thing. But just as an example, it's funny how people view things because, like you say, it was a vicious crime. It was kind of put into place by her. What's the difference when we're talking about the mastermind behind a just a heinous crime? I don't know.
Yeah, I've kind of watched as half of our nation has turned against JD Vance. And not just, as a political representative,
Mhm.
but the book that he wrote. He wrote a great book. It's
Mhm.
turned into a movie. Everybody loved it. And, he's been named as a candidate for vice president, and now everyone hates the book.
Mhm.
He's not representing the Appalachian people correctly. Um, you didn't hate it before, and I
Didn't
think
hate
of
it
that in
before.
this situation. I'm sorry?
I'm just repeating. I'm backing you up. You did not hate it before. Yeah, that's so funny. People are so flaky and flippant with the tide, Um, just tell me how you really felt about it.
I know. I know. Well, I look at this situation and I think if Dee Dee was alive
Mhm.
and still doing what she was doing, and when it was all exposed, how many people would be saying, "Gypsy should have killed her. Her life was at risk. She should have taken her life, to get out of that situation. Do anything you can to get out. If you see a child being abused, you want to tell that child, do whatever it
Mhm.
takes to get out of that situation. But since Dee Dee is dead, now we're turning against Gypsy. I don't know. I think there's definitely fault on both sides, and I think it's unfortunate. It definitely it was not handled the best way, the way it should be handled. Our world cannot operate that way. Um, but, people are just real quick to flip that coin and be on the other side.
Oh yeah, I know. And I think this particular story, there was so many different viewpoints on each aspect of it, and you could say, well, some people that were for her was like, yes, she had to do whatever to get out of that, and it was awful, but she had to do that. She's pitiful, whatever. And then you could look at some people who are like, well, she was horrible, and then you could come back with, well, would you have thought that though if you saw that she was being violently attacked, like in a, almost acute situation instead of slow over time? would that
Mhm.
make you feel like, you know, burn the place down and get out of there?
Mhm.
Um, you could combat it each scenario with an opposite
Absolutely.
side.
Absolutely. And there are so many people who did live through what Gypsy Rose lived through. And they came out on the other side, not in prison, because they handled it, in a better way. So kudos to people who have been through those situations and they've grown through it and they've learned from it and they've been able to move on from it without such extreme circumstances. So
So let's talk about where she is and where she has been since all of this. She's been a busy girl.
she's very busy girl. She wrote a book. Have you read her book?
I have not. No, she's
I
got
have
too many things
not.
going. I don't have time for all the gypsy things.
No, I watch the main story. I'll catch up every now and then because I'm scrolling through TikTok and my TikTok seems to be slap full of murderous things. So I get some glimpses every now and then. But she has a reality TV show. She's got that going on.
Well, she is quite the entrepreneur. Who knew? Who knew? Okay, then the other side of me that's not being snarky is like, well, good for her. She's been given a second chance, and this she's getting, the time redeemed, right?
Yes. Yes. But how's she spending that time? I think we've
Well, but hey, she was given attention nonstop, be it negative or positive. She's used to that stroke. She's used to that attention.
yes.
So she's gonna lean towards that.
So that was my other point was, as a child, it was, oh, poor Gypsy. Oh gosh, poor Gypsy. Oh, she lost all of her hair. Oh, her teeth are falling out. This poor child, let's give the family money. Let's take them on fun trips. She is used to being the center of attention
Hmm.
and that attention being very doty and positive. I know she's been through a couple of gentlemen since then. Um, is she looking for that? Is she expecting that? And when that reality TV show isn't, the hippest thing for America to talk about, and things quieten down for her, I wonder how she'll handle that.
Yeah. So after her, I guess like forced breakup with Nicholas, after they were both sent away, she got with a pen pal. We've talked about pen pals before. This is interesting. Um,
Prison pen pal.
prison pen pals. And so, that was Ken. And then I guess it was over with Ken. And then she was with this guy, Ryan Anderson, that she actually married in prison, right? The prison marriage is always weird to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't
But then
understand it.
it didn't last. Imagine that. So it didn't last in prison. But then she's back with this guy, this pen pal guy, and expecting.
Expecting a baby girl.
Yeah. Which I've got thoughts on that.
I have questions. I mean, yeah, what will that look like?
Yeah. It's again, it's the two sides of Mandy. I'm like, well, good for her. And, God is good. And we get a chance to fix, I sure hope, to fix our screw ups in life. Sometimes they're bigger than others. So, she's given a chance at life and to be a mother and maybe be the mother that she didn't have and maybe raise this child in the way that she was raised. That all
Mhm.
sounds good. But then the other side of me, I read a little interview she did, and she was just talking about how she already nurtures this unborn child and how she lays in cradles and this kind of stuff. And that's great. But I'm thinking, well, you're the mom now.
Mhm.
Can you think about your mom and what happened there? But that's just my thoughts bouncing all over the place. What about you? How does it make you feel? It's not even our business, but how do you feel?
We'll just make it our business. It's
Yeah,
fine.
we kind of do that.
Um, I definitely think we have to be very careful to work through our own shadows, especially when we're becoming parents.
Mhm.
There are a lot of things that we can carry over from childhood that we think are normal. We know that Gypsy can look at her childhood and go, that was not normal. but there might be aspects of how she was raised that she thinks, "Oh, that's normal," and it's
Mhm.
actually not. Or, I don't know. It could be. I literally was in my 30s with teenage children. Well, no, older children, not teenage, but
Mhm.
older children, and I still thought, when am I going to turn into my mom? When am I going to
Mhm.
start to parent the way my mom parented? And I would look at my sister. When is my sister going to start parenting the way our mom parented? Neither of us did. We all parent very differently. We do our own thing, and um, there's not a whole lot of bleed over. And I thought, I mean, I'm an adult. I'm a grown woman raising kids, and I'm just now realizing, oh, I make my choices. I am the mom that I am because of what I've decided to be, and there are things that I pull from my childhood that I think those were good takeaways, and other things that I just choose not to use in my own life and in my children's lives, because I think they maybe did harm. And I'm sure my kids will do the same thing. You have
Oh,
to
yeah.
to take your pieces and realize what hurt you and what didn't, because as parents, sometimes we don't even realize we're hurting our children. I've hurt my
Oh,
kids'
yeah.
feelings before, and I'm like, "What are you talking about? I just told you your hair looks like crap." You know? It's not I don't know, I don't mean to hurt someone's feelings, but they know, "Hey, when I talk to my kid about their hair, I don't wanna use the word crap." We learn.
Yeah, and you're talking about completely different situations. Like, I mean, it's complicated. Becoming a parent can be complicated, and I mean, I
Mhm,
think it just is across the board. Um, but when you've got her situation, her background, it's going to be interesting to see what she does with that, because some of it, as you say, she's going to be unaware of. There's a large percentage that she knows, hey, this was messed up. But maybe she even exploits her child in a different way, but she's got her mind on the fact that it's a positive way. Yeah, I
mhm.
mean, who knows? I could see that happening because that's what she was used to. I don't know how you undo all of that.
Yeah, and I think we won't know until we see it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've done that before. I've had whether it was just doing something different from my childhood or just something that I thought I like this way of doing it. My eyes on the ball, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, but you're still doing the same kind of thing. You've just put a twist to it. And
Mhm.
it's really hard to be third person with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was that parent that with my first child, it was read every book,
Mhm.
talk to every expert. Um, they're just you want to make sure you're getting it right.
Mhm.
And by my last, it was like, we'll see. You know, you just start to go, I think I've got enough intuition. I do know that Gypsy's been through a lot of therapy. And I
Mhm.
think that is imperative. I think that's very
Yeah.
important that, she has talked through that with a health professional that's been able to help her work through some things. And you do learn a lot in therapy. And that's things that she can take into her adult life and how she handles her situations. But you got to look deep within and go, okay, just because something feels like it absolutely is right, I still have to question it because of the childhood that she had, the upbringing that she had. There's just a possibility of mom being in that head somewhere.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like she's got to be careful.
Yeah, and they say when you start seeing your child go through something, when they reach, if you've got past trauma, when they reach the age you were when you had that trauma, then you can actually have that connection and it will trigger you, because you're seeing them at that same time. So
Hmm.
could be interesting.
Well, that's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. I don't think we have that kind of time, but we're gonna have to
No.
talk some more about crimes and where people are coming from and the brainwashing and all these very interesting side points.
All the things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of really great ideas for upcoming shows. Definitely want to make sure you guys stay tuned in.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed this one.
Mhm.
It was a harsh subject and it was a tough
Yep.
reality, and of course, some things to work through. And there's a lot of information. It was a whole lot to try to pack into one
Yeah.
podcast. And so, we're sure that you have got your own thoughts and opinions. We'd love to hear them. We'd like
Mhm.
to hear what your takeaway was. And did you watch some other, shows that we didn't watch? We've watched a couple of the six that are out there. So yeah, reach out. Let us know how you take what your takeaway is. And then don't forget to tune in next week because we'll be back with a new episode.